We roommates, Curtis. Was mine yours? Was yours and mine?
It's funny you never share your cornflakes and bird seed with me. I'm the only one giving to you. That ain't fair. What's mine is yours.
Hey, Curtis don't like people in his food, man. He might hurt you. Man, me and Curtis go way back, man. He ain't gonna hurt me. Let me get back in this bowl, man. You ain't about to do nothing, right, Curtis?
If this camera wasn't on, I'd have me some chicken tonight.
Much like the ending of the Walking Dead comic book, I Am a Hero is the Japanese equivalent, yet superior of the prior zombie stories from my opinion, because it's purely character driven and never loses focus from its bombastic alien invasion zombie narrative and the world the characters inhabit and how it affects their lives as they try to survive in it. For those that aren't aware, I Am a Hero was a Japanese manga that ran from April 20th, 2009 to February 27th, 2017, concluding with a total of 22 volumes, which was the sum total of 264 chapters. The story was about a insecure 35-year-old named Hideo Suzuki, which ironically the name Hideo recontextualized in Japanese spells out the word hero, and our main protagonist is forced to work as a mangaka assistant when his own series fails due to low sales, as he struggles through a mundane life plagued with hallucinations and delusions. He comes to realize that his relationship with his girlfriend isn't that great, suspecting that she may be cheating on him with her ex-boyfriend. After confronting her about this possible affair, however, Hideo feels bad about his inquisition and decides to visit her house to apologize. But the world as he knows it is about to become overturned with zombies, also known as the ZQN infection, becoming a living nightmare as the horrifying reality of what is taking place around him finally begins to sink in. This is I Am a Hero. Hideo Suzuki, as a character, is a coward. He runs away from all his problems, and throughout the entire book, instead of accepting the fact that the apocalypse happened, he chooses to believe that someone would eventually come to rescue him, being stuck in this delusion for a majority of the beginning of the book, setting up the main narrative of the story, the coward transforming into a hero. But what makes this story interesting is that Hideo is literally crazy, as throughout the start of the apocalypse, he is schizophrenic and has delusions that border on psychosis, as he constantly motivates himself by saying his signature catchphrase from his own serialized book. He wrote, "I am a hero." But how does the story end? Well, it's extremely depressing yet uplifting simultaneously. To some, the ending of the story is underwhelming and leaves too many questions to the imagination, specifically regarding the zombie infection, considering that in The Walking Dead, zombies look like this, while in I Am a Hero, zombies look like this, and then become this, and then becomes this hulking thing that is capable of doing that, and then they become these, transforming into whatever this is, and then finally entering the final stages of the book near chapter 200 or so, they become these giant walking abominations. And finally, when you get to the end, the entire world has been infected with these giant monoliths made of human flesh and zombies, and God forbid, I don't even know what the fuck this is, but the point is, there's a lot of monster zombies in this book, and they even got one that knows kung fu and tears people's limbs off, and it's crazy. And if you wanted to get into some really creepy shit, there's a character that gets turned into a zombie that is able to cut off his head and place it onto other zombie bodies, effectively being immortal. And oh yeah, and I forgot, the zombies in this series talk. Not moan and grunt and groan, they legitimately are able to talk and form coherent, complete sentences depending on the one you run into. So, is I Am a Hero better than The Walking Dead? Absolutely, in my opinion. And should you read it? Definitely, but despite all the absurdity and insane shit this story has to offer, it never stops being realistic. In fact, it's over-realistic in its depiction of the zombie apocalypse. Now, how does The Walking Dead comic book end? Well, it goes like this. Rick Grimes forms a society and gets killed off by some kid in the prior chapter. The society doesn't fall apart because reasons, and time skip. Fast forward 20 years later, there's a big ass statue of Rick in the middle of the entire capital city or whatever it's called. Carol is married to that one chick who was in the Whisperer Horde, and he has a family now. While the comic ends on a happy, optimistic note, as Carl tells his daughter a bedtime story about her grandfather, the father of all creation, Rick Grimes, who reestablished society in this world devoid of meaning. Now, it was revealed by Robert Kirkman that The Walking Dead had an alternative ending, which would have ended the story around issue 84, which concluded the No Way Out story arc. Rick would make the proclamation and the speech, which would end with a big close-up on Rick's face. You turn the page, and Rick's face would be the same, only it was a statue, and you'd zoom out and see the full statue with some vines growing out of it on the bottom. It has cracks coming from it, and you'd realize it was quite old. Emphasis on the word old. We'd keep zooming out until we saw the statue was in Alexandria, the same place where he gave the big speech, but it was different. It was old and run down, featured broken windows and missing doors. We would keep zooming out until a zombie walked by, then another, and another, and another, and we'd see that Rick had brought them to Alexandria, giving this grand speech about rebuilding civilization and civilization, and he succeeded to the point that they built a statue to honor him, but in the end, the dead won, society crumbled again, this time seemingly for good, and that was the end of The Walking Dead. Robert Kirkman would later say that ending was embarrassingly bad and was terribly bleak, and the official ending of The Walking Dead doesn't say much but unbridled optimism for the future, not unless this ending is actually canon and everyone gets murdered in a epilogue that he makes later or in the future. But guess what book ends exactly like the book I just described, with humanity dying off and the zombies winning. I Am a Hero. And I love it in that story specifically because it couldn't have ended any other way, because the ending of I Am a Hero isn't exactly what everybody wanted, but it was the ending the story needed and was most appropriate, especially with the evolution of zombies within the series. To elaborate, yes, the main character does live by the end of the story, and other characters do survive. However, the main character is directly responsible and the sole individual culpable for being the one human being on the planet who killed almost all of humanity. The book doesn't explain it to its fullest extent, but the prevailing theory within this universe, within the context clues and the character communications to even an entire story arc devoted to telling the perspective of the zombies, is that the ZQN virus, aka the zombie virus, is either an alien infection, alien ecological bomb, used to genocide entire planets without ravaging the planetary resources, and or the final evolution of humanity. It's explained somewhat during the end of the book when the famed female heroine Himari gets taken over by the virus that the zombies themselves are a giant connected human hive mind, thereby an extension being a biological form of human singularity, being one giant human consciousness. The objective of the hive mind was to devour every human being, achieving a state of symbiosis for mankind, with everyone becoming one being within perfect harmony, where everyone understood everyone in humanity could also reach their peak, effectively being a utopia for a communist. The main character kills that, effectively killing a large portion of humanity with the singularity's death, or its state within stasis, and he was completely oblivious of the fact that if he joined the consciousness, he would have received everything he'd ever wanted in life. Hideo and Himari were characters that were infected by the virus, and they were our two protagonists. However, they were immune to it as well. Even being able to control some of the infected zombies, Himari as a character was able to control the hive mind at the end of the story to stop it from killing Hideo, but Hideo was important to the hive mind because assumably in its genetic makeup and personality that made him special, the hive mind wanted it to essentially be complete. Do we know what that is? No, the story doesn't explain that, because it was about the character's journey. And throughout the journey, there was a fine line between what humans want and what they really need and desire. Because the thing is, even if Hideo knew what the zombies really were, he would have killed it or rejected it anyway. If zombie stories didn't have a social commentary representing mindless materialism, consumerism, capitalism, and possibly slavery, being projections of our own social fears, then I'd guess I'd be talking about nothing, or the television show Z Nation, because much like the wisecrack video on philosophy of The Walking Dead, I Am a Hero asks the same questions as The Walking Dead, such as, what does it mean to live? What makes us alive? And what makes life really worth living? However, this book examines this idea and line of thinking further, bringing it to its extremis. In a world devoid of life and full of misery and pain, where we are just alive to embrace the pain in the hopes that we find freedom, while the distinction between life and death are gone, especially with the knowledge of the zombie hive mind plot twists. Zombies in The Walking Dead inherently lack meaning. They are dead husks of their former human selves with no objective but to feast on the living, while the zombies in I Am a Hero are everything that define who and what they are, being their identity. For example,
あっちは買い物。昔から買い物に時間のかかる女でした。ほら、あれ。スーツなんだと思います？通勤電車当たり。近くの大学の選手みたいです。
So the definitive answer to the question is yes, the zombies are alive and are conscious people within this series, like I said. Near the end of the book, there are sections in the story where there are full-blown conversations between the zombies and the hive mind, while zombies have motivations of their own with the secondary objective of to infect people and devour their bodies while their mind transcends all categories of humanity. But let's get back to the point of this video. Our hero, Hideo. Hideo as a character throughout the series is literally an inconsequential character. He even claims that he feels like a supporting character within his own story, and he is. The things that happen around him are far more important than the things we witness him do. While in the I Am a Hero movie, Hideo as a character gets overpowered by the overwhelming dominant personalities of those around him and gets reduced from main protagonist to supporting character who saved the day because he was too much of a coward to act and allowed his fear to get the better of him until he steps up and becomes a hero, achieving protagonist status. This is tied directly to the fact that Hideo's character never cared about human beings from the beginning to the end of the story, even saying as much during the middle part of the story of I Am a Hero, thus explaining why he is in a state of complete desperation and entropy like the characters around him, because Hideo as a character never really had anything to lose from the start of the story. Himori, Teko, and even Oda, the woman who we just survived the did rising mall of fucking apocalypse cathartic sex release in chapter 149, and the main character got his fucking dick wet, but that was nothing but a temporary distraction from his normal solitary way of living, which parallels the ending of the story, which features one major distinction. Hideo as a character finally recognizes the value in his own life, becoming a hero, his own hero. From his failed manga series presented to us, the reader, at the start of the book, and at the ending of the book, Hideo becomes the hunter and protagonist he always wanted to become, though, because of his detachment to mankind and humanity, he fails to feel despair over the totality of how alone he is, and he accepts to do whatever it takes to initially survive in this post-apocalyptic world, returning to what he was, an introvert trapped within his own self-focused solitude, however grown and more intertwined with his delusions, yet becoming a better hunter surviving off his own abilities and more focused as his own hero, while sacrifices humanity, leaving us the reader with the question, is Hideo still even alive despite him winning in the end, rejecting the communist-like paradise of the hive mind because he viewed it as something not to commune with due to his fear, anxiety, and introversion. What makes the ending of I Am a Hero tragically sad is that Hideo as a character really wanted to build connections with people, emphasizing with them. He really tried to feel something and be a social human being. At every turn he upheld what he perceived was the law, and he never forsake justice and what was right, believing that foregoing the law was the damnation of humanity. He believed this to the point of even keeping a list of all the people he's killed and the locations of all the bodies, expecting a punishment for all those he's hurt one day, even leaving behind a location of the general area you could find him. And through all of this, all of his trials and tribulations fighting hulking zombies, it was never meant to be. It's just not in his nature to be with people because he doesn't care about being one, with the ZQN hive mind, bringing evolution to mankind and bring about a new world or the prevailing idea of a singular human being operating as a community. He just doesn't care because it's not in his nature to, despite trying to make it seem as it is, because Hideo doesn't value his existence till everyone he met gave it meaning after he killed everyone, making a life out of an empire of corpses. In a sense of dramatic irony, Kaori, an extremely successful manga artist in the world, was everything Hideo sought out to be, and he ended up in a nigh utopia where he was happy, safe, and he could draw all the manga he wanted, while fucking beautiful women unprotected to repopulate the human race. Let me tell you something, God, I wish that was me. But despite all of Hideo's shortcomings and failures, Kaori still idolized Hideo because he saw his real talent, seeing his value, viewing Hideo as a better author than him. He saw value in Hideo even when Hideo didn't, just like Teko and everyone else, with those he encounters coming to appreciate and even love him for who he is throughout the series, despite his few bursts of heroism and the lowered expectations of this man's capabilities upon his arrival, yet to see him do almost the impossible at every turn. In the shopping mall, Oda was cold and pathetic and a damaged cum dumpster sex slave, making it through life taking care of herself because she knew exactly how to sell herself because of her medical knowledge and beauty, until Hideo inadvertently shows her another way of living until she gets bitten and throws herself into a garbage truck compactor, crushing her and her zombie baby. Hey, but talk about disposable characters. Disposable characters. It's not funny, but it is. Anyway, granted at the time, Hideo didn't want her to kill herself because at the time they were shacking it up, and it was believed Himari's blood was the cure to the ZQN infection, but as we all know, that doesn't really pan out, and ultimately Himari just pushes the button because she secretly hated Oda, but that's an entirely another plotline that doesn't need to be discussed, and this involves the main character having sex with Oda, and she wanted to have sex with the main character, and they do have sex, and I can tell you what chapter that is, but do I really gotta? But the point is, discussing Himari as a character, she was ultimately a very naive, pure-hearted teenager, start to finish. She was the sweet yet caring, with the ability to empathize with people on a very deep level, even with the ZQN zombies, and that's why she dies despite her lack of self-confidence and a warranted pettiness at times towards other characters. But she saw the value within Hideo and everything he had done, and sees what he could ultimately accomplish if he lived, and out of love and respect, she sways an entire hive mind composed of millions of human beings to not kill him because she cared for him that much. And only throughout the massive loss of life and sacrifice, only then could he value himself and become a hero, when he truly believed he was alone in the world and had no one left to protect in a cold, unforgiving world, accepting that as his damnation and punishment for everyone she's killed and lost. I Am a Hero was always a story about Hideo saving himself from his own self-pity, depression, and solace, throughout absolution, self-realization, epiphanies, actualizations, realizations, and a dash of knee-jerk nihilistic philosophy explored in a devastating apocalypse where all hope was lost from the start. But through the journey, Hideo learned to defend and stand up for what he believed in, and to do the same for others and himself. Someone that was going nowhere in life with no prospects and no self-respect learned self-reliance, survival, and confidence, things he would have never learned without the zombie outbreak, becoming truly effective in the end, reaching his peak potential as a human being, yet too late to utilize these realized talents. Now, at the end of the story, at the end of the journey, essentially isolated, he's found hope, life, and purpose where there honestly wouldn't be any for most. He could finally say those words his characters were saying in his manga, and truly mean every word he uttered. I am a hero. Yet the ending of the book of I Am a Hero is powerful because he no longer has to say that. He just does it. Throughout the book series, Hideo relied on his delusions and his own fictional character to survive the apocalypse, giving him comfort, and only said those words to reassure he was capable of doing something himself. Now at the end of the book, he tells himself he's alright, he's okay, as he is now the predator and not the prey. He's the protagonist that saved himself from himself, and that's the only thing that matters. Not the origin of the zombie virus, not what happened to humanity, not whatever remnants of humanity that remains, even though we know they're out there. This ending of I Am a Hero is about Hideo because the story was always about Hideo. Is melancholic while simultaneously being realistic with everything presented in the story, and now that Hideo has saved himself, he'll have to find the will to leave Japan to find others on his own. If anything, the ending tells us Hideo needed to be alone and fended for himself to grow emotionally and mentally, while letting us know he has what it takes to survive in this world devoid of life and meaning. And honestly, that's optimistic enough as it is, being a critique and celebration of what humanity is. That's the story of I Am a Hero.